channels of freezing water, uncertainties, a maze carved between ice and mountains. A deep ancestral unease sweeping across the peaks, as if awakening forces that have slept since the dawn of time. Then, the calm. A calm that does nothing to silence the unease. The tension lingers. Experienced sailors know that calm water and ice create an environment that demands respect and attention. But the rush of discovery and the courage of conquest push back the century-old shadows, cutting through the dawn like silver blades, revealing, hesitant, a liquid shimmer between walls of stone. A line of water, as thin as a tear in the world, as cold as the earth's own breath. And there, in that primitive instant, everything humanity believed about its maps and its limits began to tremble. Labyrinth of the Far South. You are watching Sci Primo, where science uncovers ancient secrets and the human spirit dares to push beyond the unknown. Who, throughout history, would dare imagine that a hidden passage at the far southern edge of the planet could challenge the very foundations of geology and rewrite the course of science itself? This place is real. This tear in the earth has a name: the Beagle Channel. But its story was not born in calm. It was shaped by the clash between men and forces as ancient as the Ice Age itself. In the early 19th century, humanity still walked in half shadow, not for lack of light, but for lack of understanding. Maps bled with uncertainty. Continents carried blurred edges, as if afraid to be revealed. And the far south of the planet remained a mystery so vast that even its silence felt dangerous. Down there, in the land of fire, islands multiplied like fragments of a shattered mirror. Mountains rose at impossible angles. Glaciers whispered in the language of ancient ice. And always returned the question that crossed centuries like an open wound. Could there be another passage between the oceans? A route that escaped the tempests of Cape Horn and the terrors of the Cape of Good Hope? The world needed an answer. And that answer slept, silent within a labyrinth of stone and sea. (1826), the challenge of the unknown. The British Navy, born of pride and of the ambition that fueled empires, chose to confront the unimaginable. It would send ships, men, instruments, a direct offensive against the planet itself. Among them, almost modest in appearance, was a vessel whose name carried no destiny yet. HMS Beagle. Commanded by Phillip Parker King, the ship pressed forward, resolute, toward the end of the world. Built on the banks of the River Thames, shaped from oak timber, it was a brig, 2 masts, clean lines, an unyielding soul. It carried between 70 and 100 men, and the silent weight of scientific instruments that would change history. The sea greeted the crew like a severe judge, at times smooth as polished glass, at others furious like a titan unchained, hurling currents that seemed intent on crushing the ship against the mountains. Still, they pressed on, not because they were fearless, but because they knew that there, in the far southern labyrinth, the planet hid answers no one else had dared to seek. Slow, atmospheric narration, map after map, line after line. The southern tip of South America, once a blur in the European imagination, was finally beginning to take shape. Glaciers, silent as sentinels from forgotten ages, became gateways. Islands emerged like sacred corridors. Sailors watched the native peoples, men who had traveled those waters for thousands of years, men who knew every murmur of the tides, every shadow in the flooded valleys, every secret of those submerged pathways. And then, as if the earth itself had grown tired of hiding its mysteries, the passage revealed itself. A continuous corridor, a millennial scar carved open by the colossal retreat of ancient glaciers. The Beagle Channel stood before them, a natural waterway between the main island of Tierra del Fuego and the islands to the south, shaped not by human hands, but by forces older than the first memory. The British officers, obsessed with cartographic precision, recorded every detail: depth, width, currents, navigation routes. The channel was mapped, but its meaning remained dormant. They lacked the eye capable of understanding not just the where, but the why. 1813, the Beagle would return to those waters years later, heavy with memories, carrying now a quiet, observant passenger, a young man who had no idea his name would be whispered across centuries. Charles Darwin. As the ship glided through the channel, it wasn't the sea that caught his eye. It was the walls of rock. There, standing before that corridor of stone and wind, Darwin noticed something no one had truly understood. They weren't just mountains. They were petrified witnesses to an ancient duel, a titanic struggle between ice and stone. Giants of ice had once pushed through this place like armies marching since the dawn of the world, crushing everything, shaping everything, until they finally retreated only when the earth, in a deep exhale, released enough warmth to break free. The channel, once merely a maritime passage, rose before Darwin like a text written by geology itself, a manuscript in stone carved by ages. And this realization, the understanding that the planet was alive, changing, restless, became one of the first pieces of the great puzzle that would lead him to the theory that would forever transform biology. The Beagle Channel was not discovered. It was decoded. The expedition only understood its true nature when they realized that this corridor was not born of chance, but of the silent, relentless labor of colossal glaciers. Only then, in the murmur of icy waters and the echo of stone walls, did the discovery reveal itself completely. It was not just a channel. It was a geological chronicle, a scar carved open by ancient ice, a solemn reminder that the earth changes and always will. That revelation offered not just a map, it offered a new way of looking at the planet, as if discovering that the ground beneath our feet breathes, shifts, and slowly writes its own story. Today, large ships would never pass through the Beagle Channel. Geology does not carve pathways for human convenience. Global trade depends on another cut through the continent, the Panama Canal. But the Beagle remains silent, immense, a guardian of a past that still breathes through its stone. And all of it exists only because that ship endured, because it returned, because it carried with it someone who would forever change the way humanity understands life itself. And then a question emerges. A question not spoken aloud, but carried by the weight of history itself. What if the HMS Beagle had never returned? What if it had shared the same grim fate as the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, swallowed by the ice in 1845 in that desperate search for the Northwest Passage? How many ideas would never have been born? How many questions would have remained without a voice? How many discoveries would have stayed imprisoned in the dark like fossils that never touch the light? Sometimes the fate of a single ship does not seal only timber and sails. It shapes the fate of science, of humanity, of the future itself. And so, another window of the world has opened before you. You've come to understand a little more of the planet you inhabit with Sci Primo, a place where science and the human adventure meet, where every episode is a door, a journey, an invitation to walk the secret corridors of history. And if today we cross the ice, the wind, and the centuries, in the next we will go even deeper. Because the world is vast, science is infinite, and the adventure has only just begun. We'll see you in the next chapter.